Missed an episode of your favorite podcast? Choose from over a decade of content in our archives, not just the latest episode. All free at GCNlive.com.
This is your call to action. Get prepared, America. Economy, survival, energy, disasters. This is USAPrepares.com. Informative radio, educational radio. Interact now by emailing instructor@USAPrepares.com or text at 434-390-7953. Class, please take your seats. Now, your instructor, Vincent Finelli.
Oh, welcome to the broadcast, everybody. This is Rich Scheben broadcasting from Northwest Montana. I'm sitting in for Vince today. And as usual, especially since tomorrow, which is the 6th, is the big day, I'm going to try to minimize stories, minimize subjective emotional opinions, and especially minimize philosophy and concentrate more on objective facts, on evidence, on election, voter fraud, technicalities, abnormalities, irregularities, math impossibilities, all the things that I've been doing for pretty much the last 2 months. And I want to thank Jason from Minnesota, who's engineering the broadcast. Thank you, Jason. And I'm going to start off with a quote. One I mentioned yesterday and one I will mention today. The first one's by Thomas Paine. By perseverance and fortitude, we have the prospect of a glorious issue. By cowardice and submission, the sad choice of variety of evils. And that's from Thomas Paine. So basically, folks, when we see all this abdication of responsibility from Department of Justice, the FBI, pretty much all of our judges, well, most of our judges, lawyers, excuse me, and courts, even in a lot of cases, our state legislatures not adhering to the law. I'm going to discuss some law today, too. I'm going to discuss as much as I can in the short 2 hours that I have. And the quote that was given to me by Vince Finelli when I was on the air with Dr. Norm Shealy yesterday that I mentioned briefly was a quote from Thomas Jefferson. Peace is that brief, glorious moment in history when everyone is standing around reloading. Now, one of the main reasons that I do what I do over the past 10 years on national radio isn't for money, isn't to be famous, isn't for infamy, isn't for any recognition. In fact, I've mentioned many times I'd rather be hated and not be willing to blow smoke up your keister so I can be liked. And that's what we need in America. We need courage. I'm going to talk some about that if I have time. What we need to do as Americans is put our country first, not our group, not our hyphen, not our pronoun, our country. And we're desperate for that particular behavior, which revolves around truth, freedom, the rule of law. We have to demand the same rules, laws, and accountability and justice for all, and not demand to lower the bars of standards and expectations based on some form of political correctness. And this is why you look at the judges, you look at the courts, you look at the Department of Justice, you look at the FBI, all the examples that we've given over the past couple of months and actually over the past few years, it's really showing what our behaviors are doing, which is lowering the bars of standards and qualifications where nothing means anything anymore. That's a very dangerous position to be in. Now, I want to start talking with about Vice President Mike Pence, and I'm going to mention a lot of updates on election/voter fraud, and I'm just going to start right now. Now, there's a lot of talk about Vice President Pence. There's a lot of people are talking about, is he part of the insurance policy that Strzok and Page talked about is, you look at how the judges in the Supreme Court let us down. You look at, there's a lot of talk about counting on the state legislatures. To me, if you want something right, you got to do it yourself. It's his constitutional duty not to turn his back on the American people and massive voter fraud. When Pence has the ability to offer competing electoral college ballots in favor of both Biden and President Trump, the U.S. Constitution mandates that the U.S. Senate can be presented with the electoral college results and must pass judgment as to its validity and its credibility. But since there are several states that did not conduct the presidential election in accordance with the U.S. mandates, they should be deemed invalid, and neither Biden nor Trump would have the required 270 votes. And that really ticks off Americans, and I understand that, because if this election was legal, was valid, did not have fraud, as per the math that I've been looking at, President Trump won well over 400 electoral votes. Not just these swing states that are in question. California's 85% of that vote was invalid. I also think he won New Mexico, Minnesota, Virginia, and maybe a couple of other states. So anyway, the 2020 presidential election winner would then be decided by Congress. Unfortunately, in refusing to hear the case of Texas versus Pennsylvania, the U.S. Supreme Court has really abdicated its constitutional duty and duty to the people to resolve a substantial controversy among the states that was properly brought up as an original jurisdiction. The Constitution clearly states in Article 3 that it's its duty. The Supreme Court really just decided, because of fear and politics and its own self-preservation, you've heard me use that term a lot, not to hear the case, when obviously the interests of 80-plus million American voters whose votes were disenfranchised based on the corruption and the corrupt leadership in these swing states. So they've ignored the rules of Michigan and Wisconsin, Arizona, Georgia, Pennsylvania, Nevada. And like I said, this was also in a lot of other states, New Mexico and Minnesota and California, and even states he won like Texas and Florida. We've uncovered a lot of voter election fraud in those states as well. It's just that President Trump won in such a landslide, in the biggest landslide in American history. And that's why this is so obvious, all this fraud, because they really had to scramble in the last minute in order to fix, I'm using air quotes, the election. So anyway, he's going to receive 2 envelopes representing competing slates of electors, one each in favor of Trump or Biden, as per Article 2, Section 1 of the Constitution, and place the evidence in the record. He should state, just by common sense, logic, rule of law, and all the fraud that we've talked about, by probably over 1,000 pieces of evidence just from little old me alone, never mind the rest of the alternative media that's not a one-man operation like we have here at usaprepares.com. Typically, it's 1 or 2 people on this show. And again, we don't do it for money, we don't do it for fame or infamy or recognition or anything. We're doing this for the American people. We're doing this for the rule of law. We're doing this for Constitution. We're doing this for freedom and liberty. So anyway, what he should do is state that the 2020 election was lawless. It was criminal. It was fraudulent. There's no credibility, no validity to this election at all. This was a landslide in favor of Donald Trump. And state election officials disregarded the law before, during, and after the election. So what he needs to do is declare that reasonable doubt, which is on paper regarding the validity, It's way beyond reasonable doubt because there's evidence, and I'm going to give probably another 50 pieces of evidence today like I do every show. So the reasonable doubt of the validity or lack of validity of the electors exist in these swing states, and they were specific targets of coordinated criminal election fraud. Remember, I went over this in a lot of detail over the past few weeks. I'm kind of shortening everything right now, but Thomas Jefferson was in a similar position when he disputed the election of 1800, and yet the 12th Amendment left this provision in place when Congress rewrote the procedures for the Electoral College afterward. That was not done by accident. So Mike Pence has a chance to be a hero, or from what all the comments that I'm reading on the internet, he also has a chance to be a coward, to be a traitor. And I know it sounds harsh, but when you turn your back on massive voter fraud, you're also turning your back on your constitutional duty. I mean, Vice President Pence, I don't know how you can trust with all these people who are bought and paid for, all these people who have been threatened, all these people who've been blackmailed. I just think it's very risky business that when you want something done, and you want to do it right, you got to do it yourself because too many people are bought and paid for. Another word for bought and paid for is owned. You know, I know some people are saying, well, we should take Pence should send the slates of electors back to the capitals and then tell them to fix it. To me, that's very risky. It's you're passing the buck. And I don't like that idea. And I know there's several ways to go about this, but when you can grab the bull by the horns and you see nobody in the outfield and you got a slow pitch coming to you, you want to swing for the fence. You know, it's kind of like, let's say you hit a home run. Let's say you hit a single. Let me make this very clear. And you're on first base. And there's a timeout called. Maybe because it's a televised game and there's a commercial, there's a timeout. So the play stopped. Let's say that person who was on first base, let's call him Joe, just for the fun of it. So he runs, there's a timeout, the play stopped, everybody's got their gloves on the ground, they're chewing tobacco, putting it in their mouth, taking a drink, whatever. So this guy who was on first, his name is Joe, he ran to second and third, and then he crossed home plate. That's called a Democrat home run. That's not valid. That's what we're seeing. So to count on other people here is very risky. You know, like with Stacey Abrams, you know, there's records that show the financial catalyst behind her was a well-funded Operation left-wing globalist. Guess whose name? George Soros and his son Alexander, who donated millions. See, Vice President Pence, we can't count on these people, on a lot of people, because so many people are bought and paid for. I'll be right back, folks. We appreciate you being here. Welcome back to the broadcast, everybody. This is Rich Scheben broadcasting from northern Montana. And talking about the theme that I've been discussing for a long time, is America still the land of the free and the home of the brave? And I'm talking to, indirectly, I guess, Vice President Pence, and really asking the question, does he need to pass the buck? Because there's so many things, there's so much fraud on our Constitution that has run rampant. I mean, our state legislatures were illegally cast aside by the establishment. There's so much fraud, I can barely discuss it. I mean, do you really want to count on other people to get this job done, which is so serious? I mean, in Arizona alone, one county allowed signature matches and found out that there was 11% fraud. And this was a county that wasn't even relevant like other counties that really made a difference. That discrepancy alone, that 11%, folks, for votes in any of the swing states, that just one thing, just that one thing would give Trump the win. And I probably mentioned, not to mention the alternative media, thousands of election fraud updates that are confirmed, that are pictures, that are videos, that are affidavits, that have been witnessed. So this is at least a 12th Amendment issue, people. The House must vote by state delegation. And if no candidate achieves 270 votes, it's one state, one vote. And you have to ask yourself about, you hear me talking about COVID and now there's COVID mutations. Is this, because one of the remedies is to create a revote. And you have to wonder, is this part of the plan? Because as we know, and I've mentioned this several times on the air, the Johns Hopkins basically says that even the CDC data shows that COVID-19 has no effect on the percentage of death of old people. And even comparing 2020 to 2019, there was no increase in deaths. There might have actually been less death. And that's why you hear, you read stories about the rich getting richer during COVID-19. And the American billionaires outperformed everybody. You think this was by accident? No, this was by agenda. And I've mentioned the agenda in great detail many times. But because I have so much other stuff about election voter fraud, I'm going to pass up on that. And that's another reason why we have to think about, and it's all speculation, but is what do you call them, the deep state, the Democrats, the establishment, whatever you call them, are they going to release another bioweapon that's more dangerous than the present-day COVID in order to keep selling the narrative of our freedoms and liberties being gone? Not to mention depopulation, getting rid of the dollar, killing the economy, all the things that we've talked about. This is another reason why President Trump needs to enact the 2018 executive order, because there is a ton of foreign interference. I've given probably dozens of examples of proof just on this show. And, one alternative is for Vice President Pence to rip up the fraudulent state votes. This election should not be certified. One of the theories I've heard or I've read is that President Trump might do something according to the Constitution, and then he may resign after he refuses to count the criminal fraudulent state votes. Because if we all know, with the evidence that we've given over the past 2 months, not just USAPrepares.com, but a lot of other alternative media, these votes are invalid, they're illegal, they're not legitimate. The whole election is disqualifying. Keep in mind, the Democrats challenged the electoral count 3 elections over the past 20 years. 2001, 2005, 2017. It's going to boil down to two scenarios, folks. The real war is, do you want to make your own choices and be free, or do you want to be told what to think, say, and live from a few elite people in the world? I'll be right back after the bottom of the hour break. Welcome back to the broadcast, everyone. Rich Scheben here. And as you heard during the break, the news regarding Ted Cruz, talking about an audit. What we need is not just an audit, we need a forensic audit. And hopefully I'll get to some of those articles if I have time, because I have so much stuff. See, the whole thing is not just a voter fraud issue. It's also, it's about other things, too. It's about major treason, sedition, espionage, racketeering, and putting corrupt people in jail, in prison. That's what it's about. And Vice President Pence, there's so much fraud. I mean, state records just recently revealed that a key lobbyist helping Dominion land a $107 million contract with Georgia previously worked as a top election staffer for Governor Kemp when he was Secretary of State. Jared Thomas, who served as Kemp's chief of staff, was hired by Dominion salesman Barry Heron. I mean, we have to connect these dots. This was all planned. It was all scripted. And Dominion machines, I saw a picture that they're made in China in a warehouse in Sacramento, California. And these suspiciously pristine Biden mail-in ballots auditors flagged in Fulton County not only had no mailing creases, not only appeared to be different paper stock, but also contained perfectly filled out ovals that appeared to be marked with a toner instead of by hand. If we did a forensic audit, it would be all over. And I know some of it's already been done, but there's so much fraud. A lot of these computers, the hard drives, they've replaced parts. They've taken out the machines they use, replaced it with new machines. They've had shredder trucks come in. I mean, this is a fiasco. I mean, this is like an elementary school play, because it's so pathetic, has so many holes, is so obvious of election and voter fraud. See, Vice President Pence, everything's at stake, not just the rule of law. We're going to be run by political correctness. We're not going to be able to protect our young, our old. Look at the nursing homes. Tens of thousands of people died in these Democrat swing states to get the COVID numbers up. We're going to have America run by China. Let me just give you some examples. There's a guy by the name of Campbell. I'm going to go off into many tangents here. He began serving a 34-year prison sentence in 2007 for sexual assault of a child. Well, the mainstream media didn't want to mention the allegations, which led to his conviction. Well, according to the criminal complaint, the man's 10-year-old daughter, that's right, pedophilia, told investigators that her father had sex with her, masturbated in front of her, and used sex toys with her, and exposed her to pornography. See, that's not adult mutual consensual sex. But this is going to be legal if you and President Trump don't do what you constitutionally have to do, as per the rule of law. So this judge, Peterson, ruled that this man must be eligible to receive transgender surgery at taxpayer expense. And yet I'm reading about all these top leaders are pedophiles, and they're caught on video, and there's files that exist, blah, blah, blah. But the people aren't seeing it. We need declassifications, Vice President Pence. I mean, even regarding the Chinese party, there was a think tank identified by the U.S. government as carrying out undercover intelligence gathering operations seeking to coerce foreign actors into backing the Chinese Communist Party preferred policies, which met with Hillary Clinton and a host of other high-level military leaders during the Obama-Biden administration. And the National Pulse did reveal that all the Russian bounties portrayed by the mainstream media has turned out to be Chinese bounties for the heads of American troops. There's a lot at stake here, folks. There's a new lot of study that estimates, I'm just going to hop around, skip around, objective facts, voter fraud evidence, and throw a little comments off a sidebar here and there. There's a new lot study that estimates 11,000 plus absentee votes lost to Trump in Georgia, another 289,000 excess fraudulent votes across Georgia, Arizona, Michigan, Nevada, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin. In Georgia, 2 counties worked to remove dead and out-of-state voters from their voter rolls. A federal judge blocked their request that the judge is literally Stacey Abrams' sister. I want you to think about if this was turned around where the Republicans did this. Now, I heard that Stacey Abrams' sister backed off a little bit on that, but this is a joke, folks. This whole thing is a scripted, planned, bought and paid for blackmail ring, and it's making America look like a joke, and that's why our U.S. dollar is dropping like a rock in gravity. It's pathetic. Next, there are 133 million registered voters in the U.S. In 2020, Trump received 74 million of the votes. Even if every single registered voter voted, that leaves only 59 million votes for Biden. But yet, Joe Biden got 80 million votes. People were ignoring math. We're being played. We're lowering our bars of standards and expectations and qualifications for illusions and agendas. Next, millions of voters concerned about election integrity deserve to be heard. I will object on January 6th on their behalf, Josh Hawley. Well, now I believe there's at least 11 senators, and thank you for all doing that. Josh Hawley is now being doxxed by Antifa. They're knocking on his door. They're threatening his wife and his newborn baby. Can you imagine if Republicans did 1/1,000,000th of the behaviors of the bought and paid for mercenaries that the Democrats send out? Next, quote, I think I want to vote for Biden. Explosive video at the Georgia State Senate Judiciary Subcommittee hearing election shows election supervisor demonstrating Dominion's adjudication process has a permission to cheat mode. See, this is why they wanted a lot of these ballots, and I'm using the term ballots in quotes. I'm doing air quotes all over the place here, folks. That it goes into a pile, and then a bought and paid for Democrat operative says, oh, that's not a Trump vote, that's a Biden vote. That's how that goes. It goes into a pile that can be changed. Next, in Georgia, 2,500 plus felons vote. 15,000 plus people voted who changed their addresses before the election. This is all legal, by the way. 40,000 failed to re-register before they voted. 10,000 plus that we can determine from obituaries that were already dead that voted. And then there's tens of thousands of underage people. This is a joke. And how many of us saw on television, okay, I see it on my PC that's been taped from television, because I haven't had television for over 13 years living off grid. During an election, there should never be a decrease in votes, but yet it's happened several times in several states. The evidence presented suggests that in Georgia, 12,000 votes, 12,000 was switched from Trump to Biden just using this. And guess what? Georgia was lost by Trump, supposedly, I'm using the term lost in quotes, by a little over 12,000 votes. Can you connect the dots here, folks? And there's stuff about the puppet governor, lieutenant governor in Georgia, the secretary of state. They're all disasters for Georgia. Won't let professionals get anywhere near the Fulton County signature verifications or anything else. See, this is the thing. They've had 2 months now to fix the computers, to fix the signatures. This is a total joke. This whole election should be null and void. I mean, when you have so-called official authorities, and I use that in quotes dramatically, saying you can't see the ballots, you can't look at the signature verification, you can't take the computers and do any forensic audits on them. That's an admission to guilt, folks. And there was one article, and I paraphrase and shorten everything because of time. There was an image from B.J. Van Gundy's signature in Georgia that was presented as evidence the other day at the Georgia hearings I laughed for 5 minutes. I'm afraid to look at it right now because I'm going to waste 5 minutes of airtime from laughter. There is no signature verification. It wasn't even close. Do you know 1 million illegitimate votes in 3 states alone? Wisconsin, 200,000 plus are illegitimate and all for Joe Biden. In Georgia, 460,000 absentee ballots have no chain of command. Pennsylvania, 200,000 more votes cast than voters. You know, in America as a whole, the U.S. had way more votes than it had people voting. Come on, people. This is a joke. Huge voter roll cleanup in California, up to 1.5 million names in Los Angeles County alone, thanks to Judicial Watch. Thank you, Tom Fitton. He's a national treasure. Next, Kimberly Parker, Central Outreach and Advocacy Center Executive Director. And I'm going to quote her now. So the majority of people we serve don't have an address, so we allow them to use our address if they register to vote and to get Georgia State ID. This is used for homeless people in Fulton County where all the discrepancies were, or most of them. This is fraud, not to mention illegal. But I guess the word legal has a new definition now. Breaking news from U.S. Treasury OCC. I just threw this in here for a little break. The largest U.S. banking regulator with new guidance allowing U.S. banks to use public blockchains and dollar stablecoins as a settlement infrastructure in the U.S. financial system. Expect the U.S. dollar to continue to drop, folks. I don't know if this is good, bad, or indifferent, but this is breaking news today. I wanted to share that with you. Going back to election voter fraud, the state of Pennsylvania has announced that restaurants will be able to open their doors once again for indoor dining as of today, January 4th. But there's one catch. You have to be self-certified. It's a trap. To open 50% capacity, you have to show proof of vaccine COVID. This is a trap in order to control the people. I'll be right back after the break, folks. Appreciate you being here. Welcome back to the broadcast, everyone. The reason why I threw in that new law change with cryptocurrencies, and some of you might think it's good, some bad. We don't have the time to get into it in detail, which we have in the past. But you have to remember the big banks are basically government-protected hedge funds. They use the people's deposits for other nefarious reasons. They don't use it to make loans, the big banks, for example. The smaller regional banks do, but banks use deposits as collateral to leverage it up and gamble it on currencies, bonds, derivatives. And you've heard me talk many times about derivatives in detail. It's in the quadrillions. Stock buybacks, keeping the share price up, owned by Wall Street banks to change the rules for their own benefits. And I've mentioned this before, more than 35% of the currency created in the U.S. ever created was created this year. I want you to wrap your head around that. Most of that was created in the last quarter of 2020. And that's why M1 money is shooting up through the roof, physical coin and currency of that nature. So I'm going to keep whipping out as much information as possible. I'm going to go off into a few tangents, and here's one of them. And basically, it's a list of some traitor media outlets that accepted sponsored trips from communist China. And you have to write this down. You have to listen to the broadcast again. You should not be patronizing these companies. And I'm going to go through it as quickly as possible. Vox, Slate, Boston Herald, Boston Globe, Huffington Post, The Atlantic, Fox News, New York Times, NPR. That's right, your tax dollars. CNBC, Newsweek, Los Angeles Times, Baltimore Sun, Chicago Tribune, The Guardian, The New Yorker, The Financial Times, Foreign Policy, The Philadelphia Inquirer, New York Magazine, Yahoo Finance, National Journal, Washington Post, Forbes, Bloomberg, Minneapolis Star Tribune, U.S. News and World Report, San Francisco Chronicle, Philadelphia Inquirer, Harvard Business Review, The Hill, Chicago Magazine, MSNBC, And they also accepted private dinners with the CCP propagandists. That's the Washington Post, Associated Press, Time Magazine, New York Times, CBS, Forbes, PBS, The Atlantic, The Economist, CNBC, Wall Street Journal, Financial Times, National Journal, NPR, Politico, Chicago Tribune, Bloomberg, BBC, Los Angeles Times, Quartz, Agent France Press, McClatchy Newspapers, Congressional Quarterly, Business Week, CNN, The Hill, Reuters, ABC, Nation, Yahoo, Newsweek. See, folks, what this is people who are putting their self-preservation and their own feathering of nest in front of you. This is treason and sedition and espionage and racketeering against the American people by just this short list. And I was going to mention another list of the traitors in Congress and Senate, past and present. I don't have enough time. That's how long the list is. That's how we are. When the courts and people in Congress and Senate says we can't see the evidence, we don't want to see the evidence, that's being either intellectually lazy, you're a moron, or you're bought and paid for. Those are pretty much the three choices, okay? So, I am going to go to more election/voter fraud and other tangents that's applicable to this context. Next, Ukraine press conference explicitly ties Hunter and Joe Biden to corruption. Imagine my shock. We've only given about 3 dozen examples here on this show. Next, extensive evidence of foreign interference in U.S. elections is now surfacing. We've given dozens of examples over the last 2 months. Next, don't mention Joe being involved. That was on a secret text message regarding Beijing-Biden's direct link to China, and I've gone into some detail on that in the past. Next, Nevada's Secretary of State busted exporting sensitive voter data to Pakistan company. No, President Trump and Vice President Pence, there's no foreign interference here. I'm making this up. It's a figment of my imagination. I'm a conspiracy theorist. Executive order, please. 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 It's very applicable. Next, DOJ has all the wire transfers from China to Hunter Biden and Hunter Biden to Joe Biden. Biden to capitulate and will be arrested. I got to see it to believe it, but no foreign interference there, folks. Next, raw intel voting data shows votes switching from Trump to Biden in Pennsylvania. This is a big deal, people. The Pennsylvania lawsuit, see, Article 4 of the U.S. Constitution requires Congress and the Supreme Court and the President to stop this voter fraud steal. That's what the Pennsylvania lawsuit was about. In Article 1, the U.S. Constitution, the delegates of state and federal legislators alone have the power to make the laws addressing the times, place, and manner of conducting federal elections. In Article 2, Section 1, or Section 2 provides the state legislatures are to decide how the presidential electors and the state are to be appointed. This is your duty. We cannot count on passing the buck, people. I'll be right back after the top of the hour break. We appreciate you being here. Welcome back to hour number 2, everybody. Rich Scheben, sitting in for Vince Finelli, broadcasting out of Northwest Montana. And Vice President Pence, I'm not trying to be harsh. I'm not trying to unfairly judge you, but, you know, we don't get to play 3D chess because we don't have the inside information that you do. But we see a lot of opportunities being passed by. We see a lot of cowards. We see a lot of traitors. We see a lot of people bought and paid for and blackmailed. And we have to play a little Monday morning quarterback. We have to be speculative. And regarding some of the news during the break, I try to mention this whenever I can. Today is so important, people, to vote in Georgia. Everybody must show up. Our freedom is literally in the balance. And January 6th in D.C. is imperative. As many patriots as possible needs to go there. So I just wanted to make those quick announcements. And I wanted to talk about what's so important, because work has been delegitimized. Standards, expectations, qualifications, they pretty much mean nothing today. You get a job based on what group you're in. And that's especially true for government work, since we're talking about, and big corporations, since we're talking about election/voter fraud. And I think what we need to do is up the criteria. We should add the first three things for these type of jobs for work. Should be patriotism, intelligence, and guts. And when I say guts, I mean courage. As far as patriotism, when I say criteria, I mean qualifications. I mean that's what we need to be judged by. We need to have a desire for freedom, liberty, justice, the rule of law, the Constitution, pursuing happiness, defending the Republic from some reset or whatever they're planning for us, which is not good from what I've read. And when I say intelligence, I don't mean book smarts. That's a small part of it. We need to have logic, common sense, the ability to be transparent. We have to have street smarts. You know, when I went to school to get my degrees, and to me they're useless, they're worthless, because they don't get you the job anymore. And I couldn't, like a lot of us deplorables, we didn't get good grades because we had to work while we were going to school. So mostly off the books type jobs so we can survive and get that degree. Well, when I had that degree in forestry and I went to the National Forest Service, they told me they wouldn't hire me as a white male. They hired two girls in the waiting room with no education, no experience. I could see the writing on the wall in the direction America was heading. And that is back in the early 80s. This is not a phenomenon that's been 20 years in the making. It's been 50 years in the making. We also have to have the ability to think with foresight. Think 3, 4, 5, 6 moves ahead. You've heard me talk about that regarding good chess players or good pool players. Foresight means planning. Now, with most people, plan A doesn't work out. I'm on my plan LMNOP. And that's why planning is necessary. And we have to balance. Part of intelligence is a balance of, I hate to use the term philosophy because I tried at this time not to talk much about it, but we need a balance between nature and technology. Especially our young people, they're so enveloped and addicted to technology, they've lost the ability to think with common sense and logic because they don't have that balance between nature and technology. And when I talk about guts or courage, you got to have a little bit, got to be maybe a little badass, maybe a little bit of a son of a bitch, but you got to be a whole lot of American. And when I talk about that, I talk about, let's talk about President Nunes. Devin Nunes just received the Presidential Medal of Freedom in the White House. He deserves it. There's a lot of good people. Rand Paul, Jordan, Getz. I don't have time to mention all the great names of people who are actually doing their job in Congress. Here's another good article right here where a sheriff in Lewis County, Washington, was sticking up for Spiffy's restaurant. The name of this sheriff, and he's a hero, is Rob Snazza. And I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, Rob. And he stood up to the Nazi government restriction closures in a very pro-Nazi, totalitarian, tyrannical state. And this is Lewis County, Washington. So those of you who have Rob Snazza in your jurisdiction, please give him a call, thank him, because our law enforcement are sticking their necks out, not all of them. The people who care about the Constitution and the rule of law are the ones who are going along with this tyrannical, totalitarian, communist insurrection, or just caring about their own self-preservation. So when you hear about Sheriff Snazza, he needs to be patted on the back. He needs a thank you. So when I talk about guts, that's what I mean. loyalty, open loyalty to your country and the rule of law and the Constitution, not passing the buck. In other words, having the guts to be hated for telling the truth versus wanting to be liked by blowing smoke up someone's keister. Okay, I'm going to go to more election/voter fraud. I had to throw in some good news there because there's not a lot of good news out there because so many people care more about their self-preservation than their own country. Okay, next article. Raffenspergers get caught. Georgia ballots were printed differently for GOP counties versus Democrat counties. Of course the election was rigged. We've talked about this type of stuff already. Press conference at Arizona State Capitol. Citizen investigation uncovers thousands of illegal votes in Arizona. Next, Arizona patriots identify between 160,000 to 400,000 phantom ballots in their state. This is a joke, folks. This is pathetic. Next, economist finds 289,000 election-changing excess votes. Guess who they're for? That's right, Joe Biden. Next, 368 fraudulent excess votes tipped election to Joe Biden. Imagine my shock. Next, analysis of 3,000 counties revealed Joe Biden received 5.6% more votes in counties using Dominion voting machines. Have you noticed, folks, every irregularity, every math improbability or impossibility, every glitch, whatever you call it, every scenario goes in favor of Joe Biden. That's not a coincidence, folks. That's called fraud. And speaking of fraud, Pennsylvania certifies more than 200,000 fraudulent votes. Before the last break, I was talking about Pennsylvania. Now, Pennsylvania, the judges, I need to go back to the state executives because their officials, the laws were changed. Let's put it this way. The laws should be changed by their state legislature. Okay, but it didn't happen. That's why there was so much massive fraud on a massive scale that basically enabled the election of Biden. So the Republican Party of Pennsylvania filed a lawsuit challenging the unconstitutional changes to the state election laws, and they lost in the Pennsylvania Supreme Court, and the U.S. Supreme Court refused to review it. See, this is called cowardice. This is called traitors. This is called people bought and paid for, intimidated, blackmailed. See, the Supreme Court, they're still dragging their feet, and there's no justice in the U.S. Circuit Court, the Supreme Court, nothing. And these people were warned about the Supreme Court inaction. And I'm just trying to paraphrase as much as I can. The constitutional issue raised by the lawsuit created conditions that could lead to serious post-election problems. Do you think? Justice Thomas and Gorsuch joined Alito in this statement, but nobody else. And same thing with the Texas lawsuit. The Texas case alleged that using the COVID-19 was an excuse, and state government officials of Pennsylvania, Georgia, Michigan, Wisconsin usurped their state legislature's authority and unconstitutionally revised their state's election statutes. See, these changes are fraud. That's what makes fraud possible. See, but the Supreme Court, again, refused to hear the case because of lack of standing. They are 100% wrong. Article 4 of the Constitution says the United States shall guarantee to every state is the union of a republic form of government. The essence of a republic is the sovereign power is exercised by representatives elected by the people, for the people. And again, this all made election fraud possible. So when an election is stolen by corrupt politicians and parties, and judges and state officials don't do what their job is supposed to do. And this is why I mentioned earlier about Vice President Trump giving this back to the state legislatures. I think it's a big risk, because the right of the people to choose their representation has been taken away from them. The states created the federal government when they ratified the Constitution. The Supreme Court is basically an entity of that Constitution. And if they're acting unlawful, they're abdicating their responsibilities. Same thing with William Barr. Total dereliction of duty. In Article 4, he has a duty to every state in the Union of a republic form of government. You know, he mentioned very clearly that he didn't see election fraud. This is a joke. It's in the Constitution. So even when you think about Congress or the state legislatures, we're all asking, are they going to shirk their duty as well? As per Article 4, Congress also has a duty to guarantee to the states a republican form of government. This is what we are literally handed: fraud possibilities to the most corrupt entities in this country. We should not strip the American people of the right to honest and fair elections. I'll be right back, folks. Welcome back to the broadcast, everyone. Rich Scheben from Montana. And the bottom line of what I was saying before the break is that a fraudulent election is an act of war against we the people of the United States. And President Trump and Vice President Pence has a constitutional duty imposed on him by Article 4, Section 4, regarding fixing all this unfaithful, lawless, criminal voting. We have to demand that our president isn't made by or in China. Okay? So, that being said, I'm going to mention more election voter fraud. I'm looking at the time, and I'm going to have to start shortcutting my shortcuts as usual. Code inventor hacks Georgia voting machines 2 different ways. I'm sure everyone in this audience saw that already. And his name was Jovan Pulitzer. I'm sure I'm pronouncing it incorrectly. I apologize, Mr. Pulitzer, if you're listening. And he talks about how he revealed electronic voting machines in Georgia communicating with a vendor in China. What did I just say? We need a president not made by or controlled by China. We don't need made in China. Next, Jovan Pulitzer says Georgia called in trucks to get rid of the evidence in Fulton County. He is supposed to be destroying evidence and scanning the videos. Next, Jovan Pulitzer, Fulton County began shredding evidence ballots yesterday, 4 hours after he was asked to inspect them. Come on, people. This is really, we're getting to the point where it's stupid now. I mean, he gets permission to look at the evidence forensically of the ballots. So what do the criminals do? They start shredding them? Come on, man. You know, in Georgia, there was a vote adjudication of like 93+%. In the past few votes, it was 1.2%. Come on. That's a 780% increase from 2016, a 446% increase from 2008. Republican ballots were proven to be misaligned on the bullseye for the proper allocation of votes. This is not an accident. I saw the video. This is real. I'm not making this up. It's all out there. And guess what happens when you don't do or say the right thing, folks? Well, one of his team members in Atlanta got shot at. He took 5 shots to the windows by a drive-by shooter. One of them, at least, went through the window of his daughter. See, this is what they do. This is what they do. If they can't win with objective facts, they use violence. They dox. They demonize, discredit, delegitimize. They eliminate any commerce coming your way. That's what they do. That's not legitimate. That's not legal. That's called admission to guilt. Because if they could go by their own actions and everything was legitimate, that's why I talk about the delegitimization of work all the time. This is what happens when you lower the bars of standards and expectations for a job. It metastasizes like a cancer. And the people who are targeted do not get rights, protection, or restitution under the rule of law. And you give unchecked runaway power to the most illegitimate, most corrupt organizations in the country or the world. And you give them liability immunity, which creates more wealth inequality. In other words, you're setting precedents and eliminating the rule of law, and you're giving these big corporations and big portions of government free lunches. And they give us back divide and conquer strategies and reward us with mediocrity. That's what happens. That's all part of the plan. I've gone into great detail and specificity on this. Okay, I'm looking at the clock here. Time's running short. Georgia County official Raffensperger armed Secretary of State agents with handcuffs to the county after they complained about the Dominion machines. Think about that, folks. You complain about the Dominion machines, and they call security on you with handcuffs to intimidate you. That's not America. That's not legitimate voting. That's criminal fraud. I'll be right back after the break, folks. Welcome back to the class, everyone. Rich Scheben sitting in for Vincent Finelli, and I think we all realize that even when you hear the news during the breaks, the elite they say they're in the information business, but it really is the propaganda business. It's the hoax business. It's the false flag business. It's the lie gaslighting business. It's the divide and conquer business. And one thing that I really stressed over my 10 years on the air is giving examples of wealth redistribution. It's not about equality, fairness, and tolerance. These are PC buzzwords used as tools and weapons to divide us and confuse the people. The money is going from the bottom 93% to the top 1% to 2%. The top 1% to 2% get the bakeries. The next 5% to 6% get the bread trucks, and the bottom 93% get the crumbs. I personally think that America is worth fighting for, and that's a question you have to ask yourself. Because what I see is people, whether it be big corporations and especially big government, they're not doing their jobs. They care more about manufacturing the perception of their own self-importance and self-preservation. I see the alternative media and the patriots doing the job of journalism, courts, judges, and all the other entities that I talk about on a regular basis. And I'm looking at the clock again, and it's like, whoa, all right, I'm going to move on, folks, because there's just so much information, and I'm not going to get to probably 50% of what I wanted to. All right, next, election voter fraud evidence. Infographics confirm the absolute fraud in the Pennsylvania 2020 election results, including the 2,000 and 5,000 ballots. I got to shortcut my shortcut, folks. Next, Democrats hedged their bets. Kamala Harris was sworn in as U.S. Senator on Sunday, and CNN is freaking out. Folks, think about that. If you're sworn in and you supposedly won the election as vice president, why are they swearing her in? Next, we could talk about that for an hour. I don't have the time. New video shows Dominion's Eric Coomer admitting their voting machine systems are wireless and support all networks. We've talked about this in detail. Next, but you got to remember, these people were saying we're liars. We're making it up. We're conspiracy theorists. But yet when the evidence shows, they still don't want to admit it because they really think that you're stupid. Next, For 5 states to stop counting on election night is absolutely unprecedented. Cindy Powell. Next, DOD insider caught on tape admitting that illegal ballots were offloaded from a plane in Arizona. Next, Wisconsin legislature announced resolution to be introduced on Thursday, which will likely decertify the state and award it to President Trump. Well, let's see it and stop talking about it. Next, data scientist says 17,000 Trump votes switched to Biden in Georgia. Next, video released of vans removing ballots from a Georgia warehouse with armed guards to Sheriff Jackson's office, and they had a map. So that means they were going from place to place. This is a joke, people. Next, another video of corrupt Georgia election workers feeding same ballots through the machines numerous times. Another video. How much evidence do we need, folks? Oh, we're all conspiracy theorists. Don't look at the videos. Don't look at the photos. Don't listen to the witnesses or the affidavits. Oh, everybody's conspiracy theory. Yeah. Next, New Mexico GOP accuses Secretary of State of withholding election records from Trump. Imagine my shock. Next, Facebook suspends Republican ad campaign days before Georgia election. Next, data scientists, 24,000+ votes removed in Georgia, and another 12,000+ switched to Biden. Confirmed. Proof. Evidence. Well, must be a conspiracy theorist. Next, a printer in Michigan printed tens of thousands of excess Pennsylvania ballots, which were shipped to New York, fraudulently filled out, and then delivered to Pennsylvania. I can barely sit in my chair. This is ridiculous. Fraud, fraud, fraud. Next, libs panic over losing Hispanic vote. What do you expect? The Democrats and Ilhan Omar literally said publicly that Hispanics or Latinos cannot compete in the merit-based system. That's called degradation. That's called disrespect. That's called having the bars of standards and expectations lowered. That's called insulting your work ethic, ability, and intelligence. I can't believe why one Latino would vote for the Democrat Party. Next, illegal alien charged with murder. Okay, I've said this before and I'll say it again. It happens every day in this country. The judges and the attorneys who are involved in illegal aliens, who are proponents of them being here without being vetted, need to have all of their wealth confiscated. I'm not using big words here. Gee. Next, Texas social worker charged with 134 felony counts of election fraud. You can't make this stuff up, folks. That's why I give up my disclaimer. All these articles are published in the public domain. I don't make them up. This is not a comedy act, I promise you. It's not satire unless I mean it to be. Next, leaked audio reveals Dominion operators being trained to alter election results. This is a joke. Next, how is Hunter Biden celebrating the new year? New photos emerge of Hunter Biden pushing drugs on women. Can you imagine if a Republican did that? Next, run back election systems team up with Dominion voting systems in Georgia election. Pallets of companies' ballots found in Fulton County warehouse. Pallets of company ballots found in Fulton County warehouse. People, this is pathetic. This is making America look like a banana republic. Really, seriously. Duct tape, go out to your flag right now and duct tape a banana to your flag. Next. Pallets, this is similar but different. Pallets of fake ballots in Georgia, Fulton County were identified and filmed and sampled before the trucks were moved. And it was shredded too, but they were filmed. and sampled and identified. Well, let's arrest them then. Next, Georgia's Secretary of State Raffensperger, I don't know how this guy is still walking free, certified Georgia's 2020 election results knowing 460,000 ballots were missing, which is legally required for the chain custody documentation. That's legal. Oh, I wish I had more time. Next, Georgia Secretary of State Raffensperger neglected to protect Georgians by allowing Dominion voting machines, which basically didn't prevent any fraud at all, and allowed it. You see, according to the executive order of 2018 that President Trump enacted wrote in September of 2018, Raffensperger's going to prison. I don't know why he's walking the streets. Next, White House planning to refer Brad Raffensperger to Secret Service for investigation under the Espionage Act. Jeez. My God, if you or I did 1/1,000,000th of what these traitors have done, we'd be in the who's gal for life, people. Next, Nevada's signature verification system for mail-in ballots had an 89% failure rate. 89 in Nevada. Come on, people. This is pathetic. Next, Dominion Smartmatic share the same office address in the Barbados. But you remember all these CEOs and all these people were coming out and saying they weren't related? They're sharing the same office. This gets stupid now. I'm sorry, this gets stupid. Next, Nevada's signature verification system for mail-in ballots. Okay, I think I mentioned that. 89% failure rate. Next, White House planning to refer Raffensperger to Secret Service. Okay, I did mention that. Okay, next, Fulton County, Georgia ballot inspection hearing subverted. Georgia is stalling to prevent forensic review of the ballots and the machines so they can have time to fix everything. This is pathetic. This whole election is null and void, people. This is like a kindergarten skit. This is ridiculous. This is anti-constitutional. It's illegal. Oh my God, the treason and sedition. Why aren't people being arrested, President Trump? Next, Democrats, and this is confirmed, contempt for the military reached new heights in the 2020 election. They showed it by stealing military votes. That's right, our military who's putting their life on their line. We've lost over 1 million combat soldiers in our history, well over 1 million, who fought for our freedoms, our liberties, and our Constitution and our way of life. And the Democrats are literally switching votes. Here's an article. Democrat operatives in Michigan and Georgia tampered with the military ballots, filled out the ones and marked them 100% for Joe Biden. 100%. Come on, people. The Democrats hate you, hate us, hate the military. The people who are putting their lives on the line for our country. The Democrats are literally saying, I hate you and disrespect you. Next. Pardon me going fast, people. I'm looking at the clock. Facebook's removed 1.7 million member names that says Joe Biden is not my president without warning. But the anti-Trump crowd that says not my president has still been posted for 4 years. That's right. No hypocrisy and double standards there, right? How many articles have I given about hypocrisy and double standards over the years? I cannot count them. All right, next. Senate investigation finds Obama administration was knowingly funding an Al-Qaeda affiliate. Can you imagine that? With all the Russia fake hoax and the Mueller trial and the hundreds of millions of dollars spent with your taxpayer dollars, which is tanking the dollar right now because of inflation. If President Trump did 1/1,000,000th of what Biden and Obama did, he would have been ousted a long time ago. This is pathetic. This is a joke. These people should be arrested for treason, sedition, espionage. Next. Trump administration declassifies intelligence that indicates China offered to pay non-state actors in Afghanistan to attack U.S. soldiers. That's what the Democrat Party thinks of you. They're allowing our soldiers to get a bounty on their heads. This is a joke. I'll be right back, folks. Welcome back to the broadcast, everyone. Rich Scheben from Montana. Last segment of the day, and that's good because I'm running out of breath because, I have a certain amount of information that I want to present regarding hard facts, regarding evidence, especially with election and voter fraud at this portion of our country. And I never get to all of it, but at the end, I shortcut my shortcuts, as you always hear me say, to give proper information in the right context so the message can be delivered, and you do with it what you wish to do. There's an old saying that people still use, it is what it is, but the true finish of that statement is, it is what it is unless you change it. So when you see fraud, illegal criminal activity, we have to change it. Just like this data scientist, there's a video on it, they discovered 432,000 votes removed from President Trump in at least 15 counties in Pennsylvania. This is ridiculous. This is voter fraud all the way. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to skip certain things because there's some pathetic stuff going on. Like Kamala Harris, she told a tale recently about how she fell out of a stroller during a civil rights march and told her mother she wanted freedom. And she actually told this story. I read the article. Well, the story was gleaned or lifted or stolen or plagiarized, however you want to put it, from a Playboy interview with Martin Luther King back in 1965. That didn't happen to her. She stole the story. You can't believe a word these people say. How many hate hoaxes have been uncovered over the last several years in this country? Almost everything is a hoax or a lie or gaslighting or propaganda. Everything that comes from these people's mouth. Not just the mainstream media, but the Democrat Party at large and the bought paid for rhino neocons on the right too, which Georgia has the full Monty of. And speaking of Georgia, did you hear that Ossoff's company produced a documentary praising China's rise in Africa? That's right, Georgians. I'm not making this up. It's up to you to do the right thing. But President Trump he's this, he's that, even though it's all second-hand, third-hand, fourth-hand rumors, gossip, and hearsay. Even though none of it was proven. Even though hundreds of millions of dollars were spent on these trials, on these hoaxes, on the propaganda, where it was proven that Hillary Clinton, the DNC, paid for the P dossier. Everything was proven, except for the Russian collaboration, except for Ukraine, except for everything. And the Bidens and the Obamas have done everything that they say Donald Trump and the Republicans have done. President Trump's had a lot of great accomplishments. I don't have time to go through them all, but he made cruelty to animals a felony. He gave billions of dollars to the opioid crisis. He doesn't even take a salary. I think he works for like $1 a quarter or a paycheck or even a year. That's called working for free. He put his life, his family's safety on the line for us. I think we owe him. And it's not just about Donald Trump. It's about the legitimacy of the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, our freedoms, and just the legitimacy of America. If we install a president that's made and bought off by China, America's done. Everything about America is done. You know, since President Trump came in, we're the largest producer of oil, which makes us more self-sufficient, not being dependent on other countries. He built a wall to properly vet legal immigration, just like legal votes. It's not like, oh, well, President Trump and the Republicans, they hate people who have different sexual orientation, different skin pigmentation shades, different genders. No, it's called vetting. He slashed prices for medications, and Big Pharma hates his guts. He's cleaning up, he's doing bills on saving our seas and cleaning up tons of plastic and garbage from the ocean. He's given big wilderness protection, conservation bills, designating almost 400,000 acres of protected land. He's putting America first. He's kept almost every campaign promise with zero support from the bought and paid for insiders. He's done more for the black and minority community than any other president. He's given opportunity zones to help minorities, pass prison reform, help the VA, try to eliminate fake news and child trafficking. He's our president, this is our country, and we got to stand up for what's right. We appreciate you being here, everybody. You have a great day.